What's good, people? It's about that time to randomly relate, reverse rants, no hate, top of the morning. Check this out. I want to do this video, and I want to get this out before I start the video. I don't know. I'm probably going to post it later. But anyways, check this out. Usyk, Mike Tyson. I want to take this big, take like a big-ass iceberg, right? And we're chipping at it, little by little, to break this iceberg down so everybody can clearly see what's on the other side of this iceberg. All right, so we all have a clear picture, okay, so we can break the bias and the bullshit. That's the purpose of me doing this video. Okay, we look at Usyk, we look at Tyson, and we say, who had the better career? Who fought the better opponents of their generation? Who did it longer? Who was more durable? You understand what I'm saying? Who had, who was able to accomplish what in what time frame? Now you look at the both of them. Now, certain accomplishments don't mean superiority, but they're still accomplishments. Like, example, you could be the youngest champion in boxing history in whatever division. That doesn't mean that you would have beat another guy. You might have lost to that guy if that guy was the opponent that night. We don't know that. So this isn't, when we use we give our opinions, okay? Let's take, I don't care, listen, we're not talking about skin color, we're not talking about nationality, we're not talking about none of that shit, okay? As far as I'm concerned, both of these motherfuckers look like the Silver Surfer. All we see is two silver motherfuckers, all right? So I don't want to hear nothing about nothing. We're not going by, oh, well, what happened? This person, his dog had worms before the fight, he couldn't focus. No, I don't want to hear none of that shit. We're not talking about any of that, but this happened, but that happened. There's many fighters in the history of boxing and any other sport where something has happened tragic that we might not even known about. And boxing is the only fucking sport on the face of the earth where you constantly hear excuses about why somebody lost, ring rust, this person broke up with their girlfriend. It's only boxing. You ain't never in your fucking life seen a wide receiver drop open fucking passes and people going, well, you got to, realize him and his brother had an argument last week and they haven't been speaking, so he's not focused. No, all you get is, you dumb motherfucker, catch the fucking ball. You put this motherfucker on the bench. You don't hear nothing about the excuses or none of that. And it could be legit reasons that you're distracted or something. You just can't find it in you. Well, you got other people that can dig down deep and find that resolve that you can't. So we're not going by any of that. We can look at this. Mike Tyson was a pro for 19 years. Usyk's been a pro for 12. Now, Mike has never been undisputed. Usyk's been undisputed twice. Mike's a two-time, world champion. Usyk did it in two different divisions. Mike has been fighting longer. When you look at the opponents for each generation and say who fought the better opponents, who was consistent, now, of course, the ultimate question in that whole, little scenario is people want to know who would it be who, and it's opinions. Regardless to what I think, you think, anybody else think, who would have won a fight between the two. It's all opinions. Now, when you look at who fought the very best people in their career, and once again, we're not going to do this from this year to this year shit. No, we're going to look at their whole career. The only difference with Usyk is he's still fighting. Okay, but what I'm saying, and he's a late bloomer when you look at it because he started at a much later age than Mike Tyson. So when we look at all these things, right, it all still, like I said, come to most people is who would have won in the fight. But let's look at their careers, because when you look at a fighter and you look at what generation they come from, you look at what they did, who they did it against, right? This is what you're measuring, because we can only assume who would be who in the fight. And look, here's the thing. Even if the majority agree with one particular fighter would have beat another, right? It's still a fantasy fight. But at the same time, right, There's no such thing as a time machine. So we can't travel back and take somebody and put them in that era and bring somebody from the old era and put them back in this era. We can't do that. Okay, that's just fantasy shit. It's not real life. So people say things like, look at what this person was capable of doing. You can see where certain people would lack. And I don't care what sport it is. You could see situations where, yeah, this guy wasn't developed as well, or, this person was not really as good as people think, or probably wouldn't have been as effective against certain guys. Just, and listen, just for the eye test, I promise you, last night, we were watching Ray Robinson fight, and I said to my sons, my two sons, I said, tell me some flaws, just tell me anything about his style that you see that's wrong, right? You know the first thing my son said? My son said, keep his hands low. He throw punches from the waist, and he leans forward a lot. And also, he's throwing wide punches, but the guy he's fighting is not really defensively that good, and he's just flat-footed. All right? And I never had this conversation with my son about Ray Robinson. But my son was, and we watched the fight where he was hopping on one foot, leaning forward, throwing his jab, and my son was like, what is he doing? Okay, so the point what I'm saying to you is, the people of Ray Robinson's generation would praise they would praise the things he did, and we wouldn't see that as flaws. Just like, for example, a technical fighter, right, and a trainer that liked technical fighters. They all say Roy Jones throw those haymakers like he throw wild punches. It might look good to the fans, but he's leaving himself open, but he was fighting fighters that wasn't making them pay for that type of stuff or whatever. You understand? So Muhammad Ali was moving he was on his legs. Boxing is done with your hands. So everybody is going to find a criticism. We're not looking for criticisms. We're looking at what's actually there. Like what does this fighter do well, or what they don't do well. When you look at their records, right? Mike Tyson has considerably more fights. Now, if we look at accomplishments alone, Usyk has accomplished a lot more than Mike Tyson in a lot shorter time, so he had a 7-year advantage on Usyk, who's still fighting, okay, in terms of how long he fought. Usyk beating someone else doesn't mean he beats Mike. Mike beating who he beat doesn't mean he beats Usyk. So, you understand? I want y'all to think about this. Why? Because whatever criteria you use to give your opinions on what you think about their careers, or even who would have beat who, whatever. Okay, so when you see somebody else in the same scenario, you got to use that same criteria. And we got to look at a person's whole career. We can't look at, like I said, the favoritism shit to try to make the fighter you like look better. So no favoritism for Mike, no favoritism for Usyk. Just straight down the fucking middle. Look at who they fought, who they lost to. Look at who they beat. And here's the thing, right? One of the things you can't dismiss about longevity or age. If I'm 38 and I'm kicking ass against the top level dudes of my generation, but you're 38 getting your ass kicked by journeymen and your generation, then you didn't do it as long as me. Or the age that we were at, you couldn't compete when I still could. So you understand what I'm saying? You're doing a disservice purposely to the sport of boxing, by doing that. Oh, from this year to this year, bullshit. We got to look at someone's whole career. And that's why people do that shit, is because they know that the fighter that they favor wasn't able to compete. So somebody could be great, just say from 25 to 42. Somebody else might have been great from 25, to 33. You understand what I'm saying? So is it fair for you to stop comparing that guy at 33? Why? Because from 33 to 42, he can't compete. Which means 42, yeah, who had the better career? So what are we judging by? You understand what I'm saying? Now, the eye test, a lot of people are still biased with the eye test, because they'll watch a fighter and say, oh, he beat him. You think so? Yeah, because this and this and that's that, right? Oh, and he fight like that guy and he beat him, so he'll beat. That's not how that works. So Now, you can look at certain fighters and see, like, certain fighters can't handle pressure. Certain fighters can't handle a slick boxer. That type of, I get that. But everybody's not the same, and people do make mistakes. Everybody's level of concentration isn't the same. You can't think every fight is going to be a repeat of the last one. You know, it's just assumptions that people make. But for me, I look at your career. I look at who you fought. I look at how long you did it, who you did it against. And what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, if we can't do this without a bias, then what are we talking about? All we're doing is just saying what we think, but why? What are we debating? What are we, I'm not trying to give any fighter the advantage. It's what you've done and who you've done it against. That's what we're looking at. So we're comparing anybody. And the reason why I chose Usyk and Tyson, I did this before, like a year ago, something like that. The reason why I chose these two is because of Mike Tyson's reputation, right? And I remember how people viewed Mike. So my thing was, okay, cool. And Usyk is still fighting, right? Just like Terrence Crawford is still fighting. But y'all comparing him to a Roy Jones and to Ray Leonard and to, other great fighters. So it's like, okay, well, he's still fighting. So what's the criteria that you're using to judge? You'd have to do the same thing for Usyk and anybody else that, in the same scenario. So Mike Tyson, his career versus Usyk's career, his accomplishments versus Usyk and Tyson's accomplishments versus each other. Who fought the better opponents? Who was the more skilled between the two? And if you pick Usyk, why do you pick Usyk? If you pick Tyson, why do you pick Tyson? Talk to me in the comment section, y'all. Leave those comments. Let me know. Never fall in love with lies. Remember, the truth brings hate out of people, and I will catch y'all on the next video.